Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to have Elijah Hasan here to do our artist talk in this space. This space is, as you can see, worked by Minor White, and it was installed. This is the first of two exhibitions, or two installations, reflecting back on our 125th anniversary. And it was installed by our photography curator, Julia Dolan. And we haven't had the opportunity to do much in this space yet, so I'm really excited that this is the first program and first time we're bringing
pioneering
this
away
energy to this space. For those of you who aren't familiar, Elijah Hasan is an award-winning filmmaker, photographer, composer, and writer. Well, primarily known for his films and still photography, some of you may know him for his work with Open Signal and other organizations in Portland. He describes what he does more universally as making art. His films often employ experimental techniques that work to blend complex concepts with powerful, graceful storytelling. As a teaching artist through residencies and workshops, he's introduced young people to creative filmmaking, photography, and various multimedia disciplines. Whether it be police officers working with students as artists, or facilitating candid conversations between youth and civic leaders utilizing film as a medium, Elijah's hybrid artistic approaches to programming have resulted in transformative impacts on participants as well as their exhibition audiences. Please help me in welcoming Elijah.
Thanks for having me. Hey, I'm going to need that write-up for later. Well, let me say what I would like to do. First of all, thank you for coming. What I would like to do is kind of break down what my intention is. My intention is to talk about a brief history of Minor White, and then my brief history as an artist here in Portland, and then talk about how a couple of the works in this space reminded me of individual works that I did, and then I'm going to dive deeper into my work and different aspects of it. So disclosure, I'm really not a Minor White buff. I knew very little about him before Betsy asked me to come in and come into the space and pick a work to parallel mine with. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I looked at Leica. There was a couple ideas with the Leica exhibit and a couple others throughout the museum. But when I stepped into this space and started looking around, it immediately started making sense. I had this sense of whoever this photographer was sharing a similar approach to photography. And by that, I mean simply just walking around with a camera with nothing necessarily in mind, but having a camera on purpose and seeing what reaches out to me as a photographer. That's the feel that I got. But let me go into what I know about Minor, and bear with me on this. This is only through the tiny bit of depth that I've dug out about him, just to give you an idea of his, at least maybe some of his relationships to Portland. I believe his first experiences in Portland was through the WPA, which was I forget what the acronym's for, Works, Progress. Thank you for that. But anyway, they commissioned him to do a couple works. I think the first one was to take pictures of these iron frame front buildings down that were going to be demolished. Well, they were concerned with them at the time being demolished and documenting them. And they ended up getting demolished. And so Minor did that. And he also got commissioned through the WPA as well to do some work in LeGrand. And I believe that's also where he was doing some teaching. So from there, I believe he went into, the military, and he was doing some work in the Pacific as intelligence. I don't know exactly what that work was, but from the military, he went back and attended Columbia University, and then in the city, while he was in New York, I believe that's where he ran into Stiglitz at the Museum of Modern Art, and that's where he got introduced to his philosophy of photography and just the connection with the things and looking at them a little differently. I won't dive too much into that, but it was interesting for me to as I was reading about this artist, how his spiritual ascension through the art and people he was meeting reminded me of my spiritual ascension. I never assumed that art would aid to my spirituality, but that has been exactly what has happened. So that was interesting for me. I'm going to keep telling his story as far as I know a little bit more. So from there, I believe he was invited to San Francisco by Ansel Adams, who was directing a department to teach there, I believe is what was going on. And there he was introduced to Ansel's system of grading, or basically shooting in a way to really take advantage of printing in monochrome. And as I was reading about that, it reminded me of my introduction to Ansel Adams. I didn't know anything about Ansel. I was introduced to Ansel by a couple of my teachers who said, hey, your work reminds me of Ansel. And when I looked, I said, who's Ansel? I said, here. I couldn't get on my phone back then. And I was looking at his work, and I was struck by how well he was able, his blacks and his whites and everything in between was really represented well. So that's what struck me. And then come to find out that was his thing. He was really good at that. And you all may be more versed with that story of his experience with Ansel and others more than me, but I'm gonna keep it moving. He found himself, I think what happened was there were a group, the guy who wrote the article that I was reading was part of a group of artists that invited him here to talk about one of the exhibits he did. And while he was here, this person who wrote this article was describing, as he spent time with him, how he was pointing to his spirituality and his approach to the work, and even to an example of a suggestion to him that he should thank the rock after he is, after you shoot the rock, thank the rock for posing for you. It was just an example of just a deeper connection to the work and the subjects. And it just again, it reminded me of my solace when I'm walking around with the camera and reflecting. So that's kind of my little spiel about Minor White. If you want to look him up, you can do that. His work is here. Before I actually came in here, the only experience I had, I was watching an OPB special that they had on, and I was like 2 minutes of it, right? And I was like, oh, this guy, Minor White, okay, yeah. And it didn't strike me as much, right? But when I walked in, it did. So that's about Minor. Now, my history. I am a third generation Portland native. My grandfather's from Arkansas. My grandmother's from Louisiana. My grandmother lived in Vanport and was in the flood. My grandfather came here to work in the shipyards because of the money. It was just very, good money here. But he ended up working in Hanford, making bombs. He said they used to check him on the way in and the way out. But to my photography, I was introduced to photography at Irvington School. I was in a program called Latchkey. It's an after-school program for young people, and we'd watch the movie back on those real 16 millimeter real film projectors. So we're watching. We may have been like The Red Balloon or one of those great classic films. After the movie, someone walked in and said, "Who wants to learn photography?" And like a fool, I raised my hand. And so at the age of 9, I was working in the dark room and shooting on a single lens reflex camera, and I was immersed in photography. And since then, it has been in my life. I guess the other, so I took yearbook and photography in high school and always excelled in those environments, but it wasn't until maybe 96, I took a 16 millimeter photography class right at the Film Center next door. A 16 millimeter from Larry Johnson, 16 millimeter cinematography, it was the name of the class. And after that class, that's when my hobby of photography became a craft. I mean, I understood how to work the parameters of aperture and shutter speed and ISO. I knew what those did, but I didn't understand the science. I didn't understand when you put that light mirror in the middle, what you're supposed to be looking for, that percent of gray. I didn't understand that, but once I did, then I was able to even go deeper into the craft of photography. So that's kind of a brief background on me. Since then, like I said, it's informed my film work, it's informed my animation, it's certainly informed my experimental work in both those genres. Also, I felt it and continue to feel it necessary to complete the cycle and go in and ask who wants to learn photography to young people and film and music. So as a matter of fact, out of all the things that I do, I think that teaching this craft to young people is my favorite thing. It is the thing that I get the most out of. I think that I get more out of it than they do. So enough about me, and now let's talk about the work. So as I said, Betsy invited me in and asked me to look around and see what pieces touched me. And there's a couple pieces here in this space that reminds me of my work. I mean, you can look around. If you guys would like to walk around, I can walk around with you and point them out to you and then come back and show you my pieces. Or you can feel free to walk around yourself, or you can just turn around. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Use your options. So this piece here reminds me of one where I was looking down at some tracks, and I'll show you that one. Also, if you want to follow me, once I went digital, and trust me, I resisted digital photography forever. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't think it was a real art format, but once I tried it and saw how fast the workflow was, I was so, I still have a few film cameras, and I still time and time shoot film, but digital just allows me to stretch it out. One of the first things I used to do when I went digital is I used to look for shadows at night. I used to shoot way more at nighttime than anything else. So to basically find those shadows and have them represented as I saw them was important. And so I'll show you my piece, and that's the one that stuck out to me. Now this piece behind this lovely young brother here, this is another one that's kind of standing outside looking in, and it reminds me of a piece that I shot standing outside on the street. There was a burned down electrical building down in Southeast Portland that the whole ceiling was off, and it was just mainly the side structures kind of burnt down. But you couldn't tell it was been burnt down because it was still kind of like brick. It looked more like apocalyptic scene where maybe something like a wave, a blast had blown everything out. But I stood outside and shut my aperture way down and shot through the fence, and it just looks like I'm shooting from inside out, but it's actually from outside in. I'll show you that piece as well. And there's a bridge. I think it's this one here. Yes. Mr. White's depiction of the more. It reminds me of a piece that I call Slow Rush, which is a panorama. I'll touch on that for a minute. One of my favorite things that I do is panorama photography. There's not a shoot that I go on that I don't do. Sam, he can tell you that, that I use panorama photography. And I mean, even in spaces like this, if I was going to shoot this room, this is catching my eye, right? So if I shoot it like this, I'm going to miss all the stuff happening on the peripherals. So I'll shoot this room, I'll step a little closer, then I would just click, 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 how many ever, stitch them together and get this piece. And that I do that more than anything. It's one of the favorite things I do because of the reasons I said. I think I'm able to pull out the peripherals. And whereas when something catches my eye and I shoot it, I lose all that stuff that was informing this thing here, right? And I think those are the main two that I want to reflect on. And if you guys you can. There's a couple other portraits that I thought were striking as well. And And there's some portraits that I'll show you as well. I like kind of how he catches people looking like in their own space, not like they're oblivious to the camera or not aware of the camera. If you haven't had a chance, do make your rounds in this space. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and head back and kind of show you some examples of my stuff. But yeah, I was struck by, just like I said, the feel of him walking around and some of the things he was shooting. Even though I know he was commissioned to shoot a lot, it just reminded me of some of my pieces. Wow, these are great chairs. I need some of these. Let's see here. So the bridge shot. Let all you guys get back in here. I'm trying to remember where I was. Oh, I know what it was. I was driving, heading downtown from the east side, and I noticed on the West Hills here, can't kind of see them very well, but there was this mist creeping over the hillside, and it struck me so, I tried to hurry up and run and park my car over on the east side of the bridge and grab my tripod and my camera, and it's freezing cold outside. It's rush hour, and I'm just running on the bridge trying to, because you only got a moment in time to catch what caught my eye. I knew that. But at any rate, so I was on the other side of the bridge running, so I had to cross rush hour traffic with my tripod and camera, and people are looking at me like, what is he doing? And come over here, and by the time I got over here, it was gone. So I was like, well, man, I'm set up. What am I going to do? Shooting. All these cars were kind of lined up and half moving. So I shot a panorama. So I started off looking east, and 19 shots later, I think I was looking west. And you know this is east because the sun is down over here, but it's still coming down over here on the west side. And I like this shot for many, 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 many reasons. I'll maybe talk about a few. Just how it's represented. When people see this, they say it looks like a film scene. But I think it also represents this honesty of where I was that day, all traffic moving. But the other thing is this idea of, which way do I want to go with this? Well, let me just, I kind of talked about just the panoramas being my way of representing what I want to do. But the other thing is I really haven't exhibited these how I envision them. I envision this piece, because it's so many shots and each of them are full resolution, this piece is actually like 15 feet wide or more. That's how I envision it. So one day I will have that exhibit of these and others. Some are vertical panoramas where I went up in this way, and that would be, of course, 20 feet high or something. I don't feel that you're really able to appreciate what's in this piece without seeing it at that size. Forgive me for not having these in order, but so this is the one, the Fargo one, the one at night. When I talk about shooting at night. That piece of whites reminded me of this piece I did some years ago. This was 2006. I know that because I just got my 20D Canon not too long ago, and it was before I left my day job, last day job I had in 2007 to become an artist full time. And this was right before that time. I was going out at night and doing my thing. And again, forgive me for these not being in order, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these and talk about each photo has a story. So if you don't mind, come along on this ride with me. And some of them will and some of them won't. So this is a piece I shot at that Mox Crest Park. Are you familiar with that is on the north side? It used to be a great place to go and have solace. Now it's just too many people. Now you can't go, people are all, it's just, I used to be able to go there and just take my pad, sit in the seat, it was always open, and just write and not think about anything. Now, all I have is a picture of that time. But I think it represents what it is well. I was on my way to do just that day, and this is what I saw. So instead of sitting, I took this picture. So it worked for me. Again, this is the example of a panorama that, without this being like 15, 20 feet high, you can't appreciate what I was looking at that day. So I'm looking at the ground here, and I'm looking, this is like looking back here. These streaks in the sky were just it was so incredible that this is the only way I could try and record it. But I mean, you could kind of appreciate it here, but not really. You'd have to be looking up at it, and maybe even in an exhibit that maybe stretched and bowed over your head or something like that. Another thing about when I was reading about Miner's work and his ascension as an artist, as far as a spiritual piece, he suggested that you stay focused, and meaning emptying your mind of thoughts, and stay focused even after you've taken, when you're printing or developing, and also when you're framing, which spoke to me as every step continue to be focused on a piece. And what I gather from that is my pieces that I take, they continue to speak to me, including and especially in the editing process. I continue to, in this digital world, play with colors, or something else in the photo may speak to me, and I will react to it. It's just, that's one way I really, that one thing that was about reading about his experience that resonated with me was that. So let's keep it moving. This is just an example of having your camera out. I used to go to school with this brother here, and I actually did music with his sister, and great drummer and a hustler, as we all can see. If you're willing to play in the snow for dough, you're gonna do it, but it was a beautiful day that day. This is part of remember the B&B fire in Central Oregon a few years back? This is on the Caldera property. I hiked up a little bit and saw this hill and took that shot.
Sorry, can I ask a question about
Sure.
the last one?
Sure.
How many shots did you take?
Oh, good question.
In that situation?
This is surely a panorama. I want to say probably 9, but you don't see them all. This has actually been cropped. The original one is longer, and it included someone, and so I just cropped it, and because this is what mattered to me. So 9. Did I answer your question?
Well, I wasn't asking about how many shots are in the panorama. I was asking about, in this situation where you had this beautiful sky, did you take more than one set of shots?
Oh, yes, I did. There was someone with me, so I was actually taking a picture of her in the space, and then this is one of the shots I was taking during that session. Yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for asking that. It's always a backstory. An example of, when I took this shot, I knew exactly what I was going to do with it, because not many people hold umbrellas at night when it's not raining. And she was, and I knew that I wanted to, black out the sides and do something. I ended up using this for an album cover for one of my music projects. Barbie's Freedom, if you want to look it up. It's all instrumental, weird stuff, but I love it. That is actually not a photograph. That is a still capture or frame capture from a film that I did with Exquisite Corpse that just struck me. I was shooting, this gentleman here was my nephew dancing, but it was from the reflection in the puddle, so I filmed that, and that's all I filmed. It was just Beautiful. That's what that is. Let's keep it moving. So you've all seen the Leica. Have you seen? Did you see the Leica? You see the giant skeleton that's in the front? That scene of fear. When I was going around trying to find pieces to match up with mine, this is the one that I was thinking first. I'm like, wow, that sure reminds me of that. And I'll tell you the story on this one is, my wife, she collects all these knickknacks and things and always bringing the stuff home, and people will comment all the time like how our house looks like a museum, all these little cool things, right? And so this piece here is, this African brother with his tool, he probably uses for cultivation or whatever. And then this figurine here came with a used group of figurines from Goodwill that were these horror figurines, right? Different poses of people being scared. And I've had them both, but one day as we were moving things around, these two came in close proximity to each other and took on a whole different meaning, and as they did, so I decided to juxtapose them and pose them and put a light on them and shoot it to really bring out this reality that's only exists because of the history of white supremacy. If there was no white supremacy in the history, this may or may not, when they moved together, they would have been what they were before. So I had to capture that, and I'm glad to be able to share it with you. Can anybody tell me where this is? What'd you say? It's in North Portland.
Is it land?
It is. If you remember, Fred Meyer on Interstate has it upstairs that a Starbucks used to be in, right? Now it's like all clothing or something. And I can remember seeing it and saying, I'm going to bring my camera and sneak in and take this shot. And this is what I did undercover. They didn't tackle me or anything. I probably am on the list at the FBI somewhere for it. I just thought this was a great shot because if you think about the world and how the world consumes food compared to the U.S., this is a perfect. You have maybe all this stuff in like maybe 3 or 4 people. It's just incredible to me. This image just brought it home. Even though I didn't intend, I was just wanting to take the great looking shot I had saw from up there. But after I got it home and saw it, I was like, wow, this is profound. And I'm sure you all know where this is, right? Madison, right? Yeah, fall is beautiful in Oregon. And this is a panorama. And yes. Got lucky. Mike Crenshaw is a local artist here, spoken word and hip hop. He did a song called Earthbound, and during the Gorge Fire this past summer, he wanted to shoot. And the day we showed up to shoot I think we're on the Washington side, and we drove, and then we shot across, him rapping with the gorge in the back, and I also shot some photographs that day. But while we're filming and he's in the middle of his verse, this helicopter flies by, the water dousing helicopter, basically what you see there, and we just got it in real time. It was just incredible. To me, it's one of those moments where the creator just blessed me for being an artist and doing the work. Well, here you go, by the way, since you're here. And it was great. So I also took some panoramas that day. This is one of them. And very high resolution. Another one where I would love to see it gigantic. Keep it moving. Drowning in Blackness. This piece, this is an example of how a piece continues to speak to me. This was a throwaway piece. The original was just a color photo that I took that was kind of maybe a little bit out of focus, and it's just, I wasn't going to use it, so I started playing with it, and this is what I ended up with, and it just took a whole nother meaning to me. The idea of drowning in blackness, this idea of what is blackness, and how I question whether it was really real. And I was having a conversation with the brother yesterday, Cleo, about whether or not this idea of blackness is really real, because the original people, as we go back, in Africa, as far as we can go back, were melanated people, dark-skinned people, and wherever they traveled, there were adaptations, and they changed. But the original people were people who looked like me, and I don't think they call themselves black. They're just women and men, doing their thing, so with this idea of again white supremacy, or that mindset. That separation of the human family, these false ideas start to come in, and then we take them on, right? But there's also this idea of blackness within the black community itself. How do we identify blackness? What is it? Is it one thing? And if you are outside of that, are you black? So this drowning in blackness, there's those conversations we have that I have with dear friends of mine and others, where we're discussing these issues of what it is. There's a film that I cut that is screening here and there, and if you can see the trailer at my website, ElijahHasan.com. If you reach out to me, I can provide for you to see the entire film. But it's called On a Heavenly Track. It was shot by Julian Johnson, a dear friend of mine, who traveled to Paris, France, and interviewed African-American expatriates living there. And they're talking about all these issues of home and identity, and the conversations that they were having sparked me because of the same thoughts that I was having, but I was hearing them out loud. So it was a really profound, like rites of passage for me to edit this project. Anyway, if you're interested, reach out to me, ElijahHasan.com, and or e@ElijahHasan.com. That's my email. Hasan, 1S. All right. Okay, so the railroad track piece of whites. This is the one that reminded me of mine. And basically I'm looking over the Broadway bridge. And again, this is a panorama as well. I'm gonna try to move through these. Everybody knows it's a steel bridge, but I drove up and down the freeway often. And at this time, at dusk, right when the sun was going down, I remember just seeing it so beautifully, like, I wish I had a camera. And one day I just decided to pull over and shoot it. And this is also a panorama. Food carts. What was it called? Photo Jam. Adobe does a competition every summer. Sometimes it's called Photo Jam, sometimes it's called something else. But this particular summer, they had a contest. I was one of the participants, where in the morning, they sent you an email and said, this is what you need to shoot, and this is the theme. And then at this time, you come in and you edit it, and then you submit it. So basically, and I think this day, the theme was natural environment. And, what is my natural environment? So I took a couple photos at that time. I'm usually just downtown walking around. So food courts, or I'm sitting at a coffee shop. And there's some pieces in here where this one spot that I sit in the window, I've captured these shots of these things that happen outside this window, and they'll come up as well, a few of them. But this is a food court area, or I'm sorry, food cart, but from inside. And this is a panorama. If I would have took this shot, say, here, you may have gotten this, but you wouldn't have got all this really cool stuff that you're eating and you didn't know. And, and those, anyway, it's just a better way to tell a picture. I'm gonna keep it moving. I run into people all the time. I said, hey, let me shoot your face. She said, yes, you may. She's also a seamstress. If you look really closely, you will see that these weirded out shapes, that's actually Big Pink tweaked out in each bubble in its own way. Another example of, you really can't appreciate this unless it was huge. You know what I mean? But I'm looking up through the new bus stops with the glass roofs downtown. Just waiting on the bus and happened to look, I'm like, wow, and just and shot it. That's what's happening. So one day there's gonna be an exhibit here or somewhere else. I love it here because they got these gigantic walls and a high ceiling, so would be perfect for that vision. Monoma Village, another example of our consumption patterns and or the industry, how we design this unsustainable industry. We design packaging that you throw away. Imagine that. Just throw it away. All we got to do is make it, but we're not responsible for the after effects. I mean, for me, okay, I'm trying not to be political. I'm really trying not to be political, but this is great. I see this all the time. But what I like about this one is they're leaving it behind. And also, as I was framing this, I also thought it would be good to isolate the colors. And I do that a lot. Some people say that's tacky, it's not real photography. But I'm like, okay, I like doing it when it speaks to me to do it. So I reserve that option. All right. So gentrification or development. This is where the old Wonder Bread place used to be. They're not in order. Okay, so I have it when Wonder was there. I have it when the building was being torn down, and I have it when it was gutted. I had it when they was left it, and I also have some now that New Seasons is there. But these are different stages of that space, which is, so this is Vancouver Avenue here, that's Fremont, and this is Williams over here. Another way Panorama Photography came in handy. Another one, so this is the building being demolished. That is it, same spot there. That's MLK Day, by the way, that they were doing this. There you go. And this is when they kind of had left it, because the boom that was happening kind of went away. So caught them in the middle like so many other spaces that they were rushing to do, and then the bottom fell of the market. Sat for a while. Another cool thing about me as an artist, I go into many different communities. This is the site of the now built masjid before it was built, as we were having fundraisers and get-togethers. And this is the Muslim Community Center of Portland, which is now, this is Vancouver Avenue right here, and Killingsworth would be here. So it's between Killingsworth and Alberta on Vancouver. It's the new masjid. You should visit sometime. Great people there. The Pearl. Well, let it be known that my brother had just started to manage apartments. And so this apartment place that it went down, and this is also in like 2006, I want to say, just not at the beginning, but near the end, you can see buildings still going up. And this is evidence that we were there. I like it. I mean, I like the colors and like so many things about it, but at the end of the day, we were there. And this is an example of panorama, but also a self-portrait. I'm in this photo. That's me here. And this guy, he was about to get married, so you can see he's kind of mulling it over, I guess.
How did you get yourself in the picture?
I had a tripod and a timer, set a 10-second timer, run back and pretend you're not posing. And, harpist from the hood. Beautiful playing sister. Have you met her, Bird? Yeah, they came to Portland a couple times, and I was glad to be able to capture her. I wish you could hear what she was playing. Another example of the Muslim community here. Now, this is historical. Why? Because this is the U.S. attorney, and this is special agent in charge of FBI. And my masjid, the leaders of the mosques that I attend, invites law enforcement in to speak and to connect with the Muslim community here in Northeast Portland. This is the oldest Muslim community in Oregon, is the Muslim Community Center of Portland. And they do it annually. And the funny thing is, I created this project called What Connects Us. And you can see it on my website as well. And what it is bringing in law enforcement to work as artists with young people. But it's way more in-depth project than that. And if, there's a trailer for it. If you go to my website, you can see it. But there's also a documentary film that's showing Sunday at the Mission Pub. If you want to see that, I'll be there as well. 7 o'clock at the Mission Theater and Pub. But I didn't put it together. What I'm trying to say is I didn't put it together that my artistry or my experience with the leadership of my mentors and the way that they engage with law enforcement and others had actually influenced me and my ideas as for how do I deal with this issue of in this case of what connects is police killings of people of color. How do I deal with that? You know what I mean? I mean, it's affecting me, and I don't want to kill nobody. I don't want to, you know, I reserve the right to defend myself against all comers. How do I make the future or engineer the future that I want to see as an artist? And so the What Connects Us project is my one thing that I'm throwing in the pot to try and create the future that I want to see by creating experiences that affect behavior. When I shoot, I shy away from commercial work, meaning weddings and senior pictures and whatever, but I do this work. And when I do it, I like to put my own artistry and spin on it. And so I got this approach to family portraits called lineage, where I line them up. This is kind of getting there, but I have some examples that I'll show you. But that's Renee Mitchell and her two sons. And I don't know if you know Renee Mitchell. She's an artist here in town, spoken word artist and teacher. But she asked me to come in and photograph her folk. Oh, so the window that I look out of at the coffee shop at Peace is one of those shots. And he was just there, just doing his thing. I was just in this corner. I'll keep showing you this more. That's a play, Tango and Tornadoes, a play that Renee wrote. And I love her features. Just beautiful. Not to drink my own Kool-Aid, but just, you know. Again, more work. This is some senior pictures that I did, or my take on it. And this place is near University of Portland. If you drive by it and down the side of the hill, there's a place you can drive to that's right on the water, and it's this huge emptied out building that's got all this beautiful graffiti. But I would suggest not going down by yourself because it is a really creepy place, you know. And I've seen too many movies. This is some of my stage work. None of these things came together, but once I knew we had them all, I kind of put them together in a way to tell a story. And I call this one the Sorrows of Capitalism. I'll keep it moving. No political stuff. This was one of my pieces for the 12 Degrees Black exhibit I had hanging at Portland Building. This was part of the top row, which was the spiritual row. Okay, this is another example of surely a panorama, but just having a camera with me. I was on my way actually to edit the film, or to work on the film of the one I was telling you about earlier with the interviews with the African Americans living in Paris. And I got there, and it just had rained or something, and these leaves had just fallen, so they hadn't been walked on, and they just had that fresh drop glow to them. And I said, I gotta shoot. So I took a second, and actually I took a couple. I took a vertical panorama and then this one. I stitched the vertical one up first, but this is the one that really just, I think, is a great representation of Portland that I know and grew up in, which was houses on the east side. And this is right around like 17th and Thompson or something like that. I don't know if you know that area over by Irvington School, kind of. All right, this is an example of the lineage that I was talking about. When I do family portraits or family work, I try and do it in interesting ways to show resemblances or relationships. Apologies for these not being in order, but this is the second in the photo that I took that was a vertical panorama of the House of Sounds on Williams Avenue. I don't know if you remember any Portland natives here? I know Sam is. Sam and I went to the same high school. Well, anyone been here more than 20 years? Okay, anyway, on Williams Avenue, there used to be a store and a record store and a barber shop, and now this has replaced it. And I have a picture of the, I don't know if I call it condemned, but the building, what it used to be, and I like putting them next to each other. And this was the second one. Beach shot. certainly, if you haven't been to the Lincoln City Kite Festival, I suggest you go. It's a lovely time. But this is also one you really can't appreciate until it gets big. And one day, putting a bug in Betsy's ear, her cohorts. So also, I love this piece and pieces like this because these family portraits, I would prefer the baby be crying because this is real. This is what it really looks like. And this is the one that they hang on their wall, not the one where everybody's perfect. And it happens so much. I find myself using those. So I'll go to like a school, a Montessori school or something, and someone asks me to do some class photos. I'm like, okay, I will drag over it. But out of the photos that I get, the ones that are the candids or the ones that aren't so great when they're doing funny face, and those are the ones I love. Okay, an example of just having the camera. Whenever the sun is shining and it's raining at the same time, I try and run and grab my camera. Because if I can get that rain backlit, I can see it. And this is an example of that. So when I had it, I had cover and everything. I was just shooting away. I didn't see this guy walking by. I was just shooting the shots and then checking for it, making sure I got it. And maybe a month or two later, I'm going through them and saw this. I was like, wow. He's just feeling it. Love. This is also a part of the 12 Degrees Black. Significance of this. This was during the W. Bush administration. After the war, one of the few marches that we had. The significance of this is, sure, it's a vertical panorama. And I took this panorama, but then about 8 years later, I was in this room behind with these pillars here, upstairs there, teaching a panorama course to young people. So that's the story of that one. An accident that I decided to use. I was shooting the moon. I don't know if any of you ever tried to shoot the moon. It is not easy to do, to get it how you see it. But anyway, it's a long exposure is the point I'm trying to make. And I couldn't tell. I didn't have my trigger release with me to take the picture without touching the camera because, then it'll move. So I set it on a timer, right? And I couldn't hear if it went off or not. And I moved it to check, and then the shutter opened. I was like, oh, so trying to move it back into place, this is what I got. And I call it Look at My Toe. That's the name of that one. My nephew, Elijah Wan, had lied to his mom and was about to feel the wrath. And this is a picture I shot of him right before that business was about to happen. That was filmed, by the way. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. This building, I hope it's still standing, Bert. You think it is? It is. Just being out in the snow, how Portland gets when the snow shuts down, and certainly a panorama there.
Is that Mississippi?
That is Mississippi. Does it still look the same? I know this is here still, right? I think there's food carts here now. Okay, another example of the lineage piece or style that I do. I'm trying to move through this. How are we doing on time?
You've got plenty of time.
I can thank you. Okay, I'm gonna whip through these. Just playing with light, seeing what catches me. More of the lineage stuff here. Okay, this is something I do. This is my mother. And as a child, as a little bit older, when she has her brothers and sisters she's raising, that's her here. And she's 15 here. And that's her when she's a little older. And I do this with different people to show a time. And I also create these custom, here's, these words here to go with. I try and match the text that's already on the negative to do that.
How large would that piece be when you present it?
Well, this one I presented at 20 inches. It could be bigger, but this worked at 20. So I want to say 16 by 20, I think. a good friend of mine is part of knows a Catholic priest whose church is hooked on, I guess the church is a building that's adjacent to a house, and this is his hallway. And as I walked in, I was just like, it was just incredible to me, all these different representations. So he let me shoot a panorama of his wall, and that's it. I told you that I love panoramas. That's kind of my thing. Same thing here. This is the other side. Well, no. This is the freeway, but next to the off-ramp, so behind it. Is this like Minnesota or something, this street? The Obama election, the first one, 2008, right? Or was that 7? Anyway, this is in November, and this building is no longer there. So it's like a 7-Eleven now. This is on the corner of 15th and Killingsworth. Yeah, and this is already historical for me, just for so many reasons. But I've never saw this type of organization and so many people working together for a cause. It was so beautiful of a time, and I miss that. And I hope it returns soon. It was just a great time for Portland, I remember. And Occupy. Remember this. Walking through. That's funny that's the same street I took, the beautiful one with the leaves, the golden leaves on. This is just a reverse angle, same street. As Betsy said, I'm also a musical artist, so this is just me shooting the crowd, which was also on film. The outside, the window shot from outside, that's it. So I'm standing in the street, shooting through, and the roof is gone. So I'm shooting through the fence and the side of the building there. Another example of that, what I just showed you before. These are all different points in time. I love this picture. Mainly, well, everybody's doing their thing. I mean, kids love it. It's raining. They're continuing to have a good time. But there's one responsible, I don't want to call him a responsible kid, but this kid here, like, just worrying, to me, I get the feeling that she's worried about her parents not paying attention to her, and is really concerned with that. But the look on her face, I don't know if you can see it, but I love that. This is the Wonder Bread building that was being torn down. Before it got torn down, somebody had wrote this lovely little couple words on here that was so telling. Coming your way. Sand in the City. About 2000, maybe 2005. Downtown Pioneer Square. You guys all been to Sand in the City, right? You've seen that? Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing. So I do some traditional panorama photography landscape. This is in Central Oregon, between Bend and Sun River, somewhere in there. There's a lava lands in there. Has anyone been there? Incredible. It looks like another planet when you get out into it. But that's it. I think those are sisters in the background, those mountains. Oh, hills. I don't know if we can call them mountains. There you go. There's a House of Sounds. There's a story on this. And it is, I did a vertical panorama. The reason I stopped because this building, as condemned, was not being used. Everything was going up around it. Whoever the owners were, I'm not sure, but it was just this here, fast asleep. Oh man. It just, to me, it just said it all. So I had to get out and shoot that, and I was trying to figure out a way. I shot a couple, and as I was shooting this vertical panorama, I started from the top and came down, and as I came down, this guy's walking by, and I used I think it was Panorama, it's a French photo stitching application, and this is the way it stitched it up. And I was like, usually I'll fix that, but when I looked, I was like, oh, it's perfect. We're disappearing, only to be left our shadow. It was just so poetic and real, and the irony of it all. And it's just a timeless shot. I hope you can enjoy that too, even in the pain I'm in looking at it. I'm in Zigzag at a cabin. My wife's uncle and aunt has a cabin near Mount Hood. And the daddy long legs are like big as your hand. And I say it because this guy, this leg is here, and this leg is here. It's almost the width of a tissue roll. Imagine daddy long legs that big sitting next to you while you do your business. Yeah, this is an example, I guess, of a piece continuing to talk to me. I shot this as part of a family. I was actually doing some work for my sister-in-law, shooting my nieces and nephews. And this was a shot on a swing in their backyard. And I created this in post, just so you know that. I am not super photographer. I like to consider myself good, but I'm not that good yet. But that's when I was looking at where this was, that's what it seemed like should be happening. So I added it, and I think it was a nice compliment to the piece. Okay, more of the lineage. This is the shot, okay, I showed you the shot inside the food cart. This is that same day outside the food cart. And another one, how things continue to speak to me. I didn't notice that her shirt was the same color as this rose here. This is in Peninsula Park. You guys been there to the Rose Gardens? If you haven't, you need to go. When it's in season, anyway. Oh boy. Another reason why I'm on the list, this story. This is the federal building as it looked before they put the new face on it. The federal building downtown now down here is different now. I would like to believe that I'm the reason that they changed it. So I walked by, this is City Hall over here, right? I walked by the federal building in City Hall many of times, and this one time I looked federal building and I looked City Hall. I was like, whoa, the entrance to these doors are directly across from each other. So I was like, oh man, this has got to be some type of Masonic or esoteric type thing that they're just, playing with us, right? So I was like, how can I represent this in a photo? And so what I came up with, I'm gonna do a vertical panorama. I'm gonna start off, I'm gonna lay on the ground in front of the federal building, sitting on the curb, lay it all the way back, shot up, 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 up. Maybe 20 shots later, I'm looking straight across. Great, got it. Get up, by that time, 3 white SUVs converge on me, take my picture, take it inside, take my license inside, and ask me, what are you doing? I was like, man, what does it look like I'm doing? I was like, look, we can do this the hard way, we can do it the easy way. I was like, okay, man, what do you need, man? They were taking people to Guantanamo back then, right? So long story short, they asked me to erase the pictures. I was like, why? So we don't want people taking pictures of our security. I was like, man, come on. That doesn't sound like a law, so I didn't erase them. And this is what I came up with. And but after this experience, I got to say, it did rattle me as an artist. I had to pause and think that when I'm inspired to do something, am I serious about it? And my answer is, you're damn right. Yeah, more. So, Special Agent in Charge, another shot, and more shot outside that same window of the coffee shop. This woman, I guess she said something to piss these officers off that had pulled up, and they just got out, and I don't even know what's going on. I think this is a taser, but I don't even know what's going on, but it was just, I caught this. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff you see outside this window on this is just a piece that I digitally painted from a photo. And this is my wife's mom. She's, oh, by the way, my wife's in Iran right now, visiting for the first time. Her dad lives there, that's where he's from. And I have purchased these Indian wraps that this woman was selling to support girls in India that were trying to avoid the sex trafficking, right? And I bought these, one for my mom, one for my wife's mom, one for, and she had just put it on, and I just took this shot, and this is one of my favorite portraits. I got a many, but this is one of my favorite ones because she didn't really, just every now and then as a photographer, you just get lucky, I think, and you just catch a spirit of someone. This is an example of that. And that's it. That's all I got. Now you can. Yes.
You talked about having these in larger scale. Have you printed any in large scale?
The largest that I printed, these are like 4 feet.
4 feet.
And they look great, but it's nowhere near where I envision them, which is like at least 10 feet, more. So I'll get to it. It'll present, the opportunity will present itself.
The panorama creates the effect that things are bending away from you. I mean, at least that's, particularly on the bridge, I really notice it's like things are bending away and up, which creates a really wonderful effect. Is there another way to create a panorama where things are flat and more linear?
Yeah, you can back up, or the lens that you're using. If you are using a lens that, and also that comes again with the proximity you are to the subject as well. But you can also digitally manipulate that and make those choices as you're stitching them. You can choose to not or have geometric distortion. I think that's what they call that.
I've got another question.
Shoot.
Okay. Beautiful pictures of Portland. I just love that
thank
you've
you.
done such a wonderful job representing Portland. I love it through your lens.
Thank you.
I'm curious, if you weren't shooting Portland, where would you be shooting? What interests you? And would there be a theme to what you would be shooting if it weren't in Portland?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. I shoot everything that moves and doesn't move. It just has to inspire me. But if I had a choice of somewhere to go and shoot, it would be Cuba, hands down. No question about it. It's just I want to go there. I want to, not as a tourist, but just as to meet the people and the people who are off Main Street. It's something I've always wanted to do, even as a kid. I don't know why, and it continues to be a plan of mine. The funny thing is my guitar player travels here all the time. He said, "Man, you should just come." I was like, "Okay." But I always make excuses not to go.
I'm kind of surprised though there's not a lot of good published photography of Cuba. At least I haven't seen much. So I'd love for you to go and see what you can come up with.
I would love to. We're putting the energy out there right now.
Could you go back, I think 3 or 4, to the last shot of the agent speaking in the Muslim Center? Yeah, that one.
Sure.
I think that can take a lot of looking at, because of just to look at the expression on his face and then to look at the other expressions.
And the ways of sitting bloody there.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was maybe even more pronounced in the earlier one,
Right.
where you could see a lot of skepticism.
Yeah, well, these were and continue to be trying times.
Yes.
And for the simple fact that our leadership is inviting law enforcement in,
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's all cookies and cream as far as the feelings between us, between the communities. And I think this was a attempt to, again, just create experiences that would affect behaviors. You know what I mean? If you've never spent any time around someone, it's easy for you to jump to conclusions or whatever outside of that experience. But once you've experienced someone, you sat, you broke bread with them. This was going on during Ramadan, fast breaking. So, they broke fast with the community. So once you've done these type of things, it starts to seep in. Maybe not in policy immediately, of course not, but in the experience, and that's it.
Am I reading it right? He's barefoot? I mean, he's got his shoes on?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
when you come in the mosque, you want to, because people pray here, so you want to definitely keep your shoes off. The last event they had like foot coverings for a couple of the participants that came in. I shot that too, but I always liked this one because this was the first one that I shot, and it's historic. And this mosque here, this building burned down. So there was a fire. We're not in this no more. So that was what the fundraiser was for, and the new site and all that now that's up. So this is certainly historical on a couple tips. Thanks for asking that. I appreciate you pointing that out. Anyone else? Yes.
What inspired you to become a photographer at what age?
9 years old, the woman that walked in to my after-school program that I was sitting in a room and asked. So I don't know if I had the intention. I just raised my hand, like a fool, I say. But it's certainly been one of the most impactful decisions I've ever made. I mean, photography informs mostly everything that I do to this day, and it has certainly influenced where I am and surely where I'm going.
What was the tipping point for quitting your day job? I think you said 2007.
Oh, yeah. The tipping point was I was sitting in my doctor's office complaining about being nauseous at work and having arm pains and back, and like I told him I was felt like I was going to be dying, having a heart attack. I was like, dude, what's wrong? He said, well, you're having stress. Like, yo, man, I can't stand my working environment is what he said, what I said. And he said, well, I can give you something to take the edge off. And so he was talking basically like these, psych drugs. He was trying to give me drugs so that I can stay where I was. And it just dawned, it just clicked, because it wasn't 3 days earlier that I was having a conversation with someone talking about how I really look down on environments where you have to take drugs to be there. Here I was. So at that moment, everything it was free. And I smiled. I was like, oh, that's okay. I'm going to take the edge off. And I went back and gave my 2 weeks that next day. And I didn't know what I was going to do, man. I just knew I couldn't do that no more. I had to stand on what I said I believed. If I had this conversation, that's really how I felt. Here you are, put something on it. So that was a tipping point. That was a tipping point. And once I made that decision, doors just started opening up. Not until. That was it. Thanks for asking. Yes.
You said you started with traditional film and then moved to digital.
Yes.
Still work in traditional film?
Not as much as I'd like to. I don't think I have the patience.
Just developing the film?
Well, developing the film, you gotta wait. That's the mystery of what the mystery of film is like. You never know, you know what I mean, until you get it back. And but I love film. I love negatives. I love the aesthetic. But usually I have to put it in someone else's hands to treat. And I had so many bad experiences. I shipped my negatives out to get it blown up down somewhere in California, and I get it back, and my negatives were scratched up and thrown back in the box. Like someone that saw my work and like, I don't like him. just whatever was going on. It's just those bad experiences, but also just once I realized how fast the digital workflow was, it was just, there's no way like today, there's just no way you can work in film. And I mean, I guess there is a way you could do it if you really had, everything in place to do it. There are some places that still develop, film, and there's places where you can print too as well and be in a dark room. But, oh man, it's like a novelty now for me. I mean, I like I said, I got some cameras sitting around, and I would play, but not really. Yeah, sorry to say it. Yeah, it's true. Not much, very much at all anymore. Anyone else? Anything else?
Yes, I have a short question.
Shoot.
Do you teach kids in school?
I do. I do workshops. I got a workshop coming up at the library spring break at the Rockwood Makerspace. It's a film and photography workshop. So I give the young people a chance to, first thing we do is talk about the issues in the world that's important to them, and we'll write them down, and then we'll figure out a way to talk about them, ask questions, maybe connect them with some adult answers from either politicians or people in the community. And those who want to learn photography, they can document the process and learn a little bit about photography that week that they're in it. So
That's coming up.
yes, 26th, the week of the 26th, Monday the 26th it starts, for teens specifically. But we'll take anybody that comes. All right, anyone else? Thanks for coming. We can relocate down, make your way down through to the cafe area, which is, yes, yeah. So there's food, drinks, hang out. If you want to chat, chop it up. Thank you.